Hello, hope you're doing great. I want to exercise my free will and create something whimsical. A while back I built Kragg in 3D. I even gave him a rig with animation controllers and he looked great on my PC. But now I want to make him stand on my desk. And to get my statue I have to do 5 steps. Prepare the model, print it, assemble, sanding and painting it. After that I can just lean back and enjoy my hard work. We need to prepare the model for printing and I want a big statue, like 60 centimeters, which is this big. But my printer only has a print volume of this big. 225 by 225 by 280 millimeters. So I cut the model into 170 cubic millimeter chunks. But we need to connect these pieces, and the easiest way I could think of is making dowels and using those to create corresponding holes for each piece. After that, chuck it into Cura to slice it and then to the printer. Enjoy the time lapse, it was kinda annoying to make. If you ever printed something with supports, you know how satisfying the next step is. Oh shit. Oh. There's something almost tragic about it. To create the piece, you need to tear everything down that supported it. On to the next step. Now that I have all my parts, I can finally start building. This is the last easy step, I just have to Lego them all together. The side that's printed directly on the build plate had a super snug fit, which meant a little knife work was needed to get everything in place where they belong. While building, you can see me fumbling with the legs. Apparently not every dowel fits snugly into its assigned hole, so I used some masking tape to make the fit tighter. Pretty surprising that my first plan with the dowel turned out this smooth. I never thought it would work right away. While building, I wondered if it would have been easier just to grab some wooden dowels from the hardware store. But that would mean going outside, and honestly printing my own felt like the perfect excuse to justify using my 3D printer more. Largely, the part didn't make a huge fuss, except for the back. It needs some gentle violets to make it fit. Overall, the assembly process was fun and way quicker than I thought. While prepping the 3D model, I totally forgot to add a hole for the right arm, so that turned into a little side quest to fix my mistake. Using a knife like an auger drill, I just stabbed through the material like it was nothing. Then I tried a box cutter with the same disappointing result. I got scared that I will destroy my print and switched to my soldering iron and started poking. With 250 degrees Celsius, the PLA became instantly malleable and I could deform it into a hole shape that I drew there beforehand. But I realized that I am not as accurate as in the printer and my hole was not in the right place. As a last resort, I grabbed the hot glue gun and mashed everything together in the right spot, but that still didn't work, so off screen I used some super glue. There are still gaps I need to fill and seams to connect. With some filament and my soldering iron I get to work. Basically everything I do here is the first time, and honestly it's a very scary thought. I could just destroy hours of work just with one slip up. This felt like the budget version of welding. I mean, I never welded before, but I can imagine it's the same vibe. More dangerous for the fingertips than for your eyes, I guess. Certainly the fumes I create must have the same level of cancer-inducing toxins, maybe a different flavor. I got through the plastic sizzling without any major accidents, only one burn. Well, two. Motherfucker is the dog. Maybe with better calibration of my printer or slicer I could skip this step entirely, or at least cut down the time in this step. Alright, little time skip. I noticed the statue was a bit wobbly on its feet, so I figured maybe I could fix that by filling the feet with sand. So I grabbed some sand, sifted it down nice and fine, and then realized the feet needed holes to actually get the sand inside. A quick fix with the soldering iron, no problem. The empty foot weighed about 53 grams. And after stuffing it with sand, it came out to 74 grams. Sounds promising, right? I mean, no it doesn't. Turns out that the extra 21 grams did absolutely nothing for stability. So, in the end, I basically wasted 2 to 3 hours experimenting with this, or on a positive note, I know what not to do. Anyway, let's move on to the next step. I really didn't know how to get my model smooth. There are many options, like vapor smoothing, but my model is gigantic and I thought about vapor smoothing way later, so I looked up alternative methods. After a quick search and tutorial from Rivals of Aether, there was an easy way to do it, but it needs some elbow grease. Basically, the model is made of stack layers, it ends up with lots of little grooves. By filling them in and sanding everything flat, the surface slowly transforms into something smooth. So I got a cup, wood filler and acetone and mixed up a 2-to-1 slurry with an old brush. Then I got to business and started coating the figure. No fancy technique here, I just keep painting on top until every last bit was coated. I also tried to just apply the wood filler with my hand like a toddler and paint over it with the acetone. It also worked kinda. For larger gaps, I just slapped the wood filler directly in and hoped it wouldn't crumble once dry. You can see how I just smeared on there. It's messy, but it works just fine. One of the advantages of first timing is that you stop overthinking it and just do it. Like a deranged artist, just putting brush stroke after brush stroke on my canvas. Or more like a tired student who wants to get to the word count. I ended up with way too much footage that feels too good to cut, but I didn't want to just play it silently. So please enjoy the honesty, the filming and the coating. Or maybe the sounds of me working is kinda like ASMR-ish. I also played with the ratio of the filler and the acetone mixture to see what works best. The way I experienced it, applying the wood filler directly and then brushing over it with the acetone tended to fill the layer lines best. This stage feels a bit like the tutorial level for painting, mixed with traditional sculpting since I'm using the wood filler almost like clay. Now that the whole statue was covered, it was time for the most time consuming step, actual sanding. I started with low grit sandpaper, working my way up through higher and higher grits. This is what we started out with, but with a lot of work we get it to something like this, a surface where the filler and the base material is blending perfectly. And it worked. The surface really did start looking cleaner, but the more I sanded, the more I realized this wasn't going to be a quick job. I just have to repeat it for the whole statue. There were easy parts to sand, like the horn, just because of the 3 axes. But there were also spots like the hands, which forced me to take a little break sometimes, because it was so frustrating. It felt endless. Sanding and more sanding. At some point I was half convinced I didn't progress and just rubbed the sandpaper on there just for kicks. So I thought there has to be a faster way. Yeah, there was. Online I bought a broken Dremel, which I fixed by the ancient method of plugging it in and simply turning it on. But I quickly discovered the downside. This thing could destroy hours of work in seconds like another tool I already use, even with the soft polishing tip. Here you can see how fast and without any effort the Dremel just grinds away and instantly smooths out the surface. It really was the time and nerve saver I yearned for this entire time. For the last polish I still use some, at this point well familiar sandpaper with a high grit. Before we head to the last step, here's a Dremel pedicure for some people to enjoy. I hope that boosts ratings. Ah yes, front and center are Kragg's 2 gigantic green feet. These chunky stompers have carried him through countless battles, but right now they just need some smoothing out, so let's give these emerald grippers the spa treatment they deserve with tender care. Yeah, we can get to the next step. Say beginners with sanding. Before painting we need to do a prep step, and it's to prime Kragg so the color is sticking nicely. And priming is done in the dungeon. The basement here is straight up serial killer vibes, but it's perfect for something like this. Nobody gonna hear me spray. And I started spraying. While spraying I thought I am doing a great job and coating the statue evenly, from head to toe, even knees and toes. It did feel like I can't do much wrong with this, but the first round of priming had meh results, and I hoped maybe the primer would smooth out little blemishes and also maybe fill some layer lines, but it didn't. I went back to the hardware store and the staff there recommended some automotive primer, so I bought a primer that claims to be better for smoothing surfaces. I won't bore you again with sanding and skip to the next priming montage and the results. Back to the dungeon. Not sure if someone is happy to see me or is scared. Either way, time to prime. The new primer worked extremely well at first glance. You can see instantly how this primer really coats the model, just with one layer, everything covered up. It just took me 2 layers for a nice surface finish. Shout out to the guy who recommended it. This one did what I expected from the first one, but still off camera I fixed some weird looking spots with wood filler, but let's go to the final prime state. Here we are, it finally looks like a real statue. The jump from polygons on a screen to something I can hold in my hand is just incredible. Every time I take something off the build plate I still can't believe this tech is real. It's not finished yet, but even at this stage it blows my mind. Kragg just standing there on my desk. I really like the stone-like finish, it almost looks like a garden statue. In the close-up you can see that the surface is not as smooth as I like it to be, but I think with color it will maybe add to the look. After all the sanding, filling and priming, it's finally time for the next big step, actual painting. Just like with the Dremel, I got my hands on a second-hand air compressor online and got a broken airbrush from a friend, fixed it up and I was good to go. I never used an airbrush before, but a friend showed me how it's done and it's kinda like a better version of a rattle can. And it's so fast. For once, if I make a mistake, I just can paint over it. It's a nice change of pace, puts my mind at ease. Before I start, here's a quick overview of the colors I will be using. I also show each one as I go. In my head, it made the most sense to start with the largest section, the brown rocky parts of Kragg. At first, I used Parasite Brown, but it didn't look quite right. So I switched to Grunge Brown and that instantly felt perfect. Unlike digital texturing, where you can just swing your brush with no works, thanks to Ctrl Z. Analog paint is wet. Touching it while moving the model undoes the progress, so it forces me to take breaks. Which is nice, gives me time to appreciate my work. After a few slips while handling the model, I realized I'd better use some masking tape. I'm definitely not as precise as I thought. And I had to bring in a towel, so I stopped scratching the model every time I move it, and a pillow for a professional easy positioning setup. It is just one coat of paint, but the joy of seeing the finish line is amazing. Turns out 70 ml was just enough to cover almost the whole model, if you squeeze out every last drop. So I ordered another bottle of Grunge Brown and a few more shades to play with. With that, I just can keep spraying until everything I need is covered up. Now that the rocks are done, I just need to reverse the masking tape and reveal the skin that needs to be green. I first started off with a Scorpy green. Not gonna lie, I didn't expect it to be this saturated. Great quality, but not for this project. This green will serve as the base coat for Kragg's actual skin tone, a foundation for the real skin color that goes on top. I tested the greens I ordered and they either were too blue or too yellowish, so I mixed them to a color that I at first thought looked good. First I mixed Scorpy Green with Majestic Forest to tone it down a bit, but it still came out too blue. Then I tried blending Majestic Forest with Ghost Green, which did get me closer in the right direction. And then I remembered what every kid learns early on. Blue and yellow make green. So I added a bit of Moon Yellow and that lifted it in a more warm tone with a hint of a blue hue. My only reference was the Kragg figure from the Rivals 1 Physical Edition. The greens in the video look crazy saturated. Here's a color corrected picture of how it looks actually IRL. In my opinion, you immediately see and feel the difference between the seemingly 100% RGB green and the new color mixture. Now that the main colors are applied, I can work on the last parts, the chest and the spikes. I almost went with the gray from the primer. It's practically the color I want, but I decided that I'd try out the neutral gray, which I mixed with a drop of that white. It would be too bad to buy these colors and not give him a try, and if I don't like it, I just can spray primer on it and make it disappear. And somehow it looks like I am painting absolutely nothing, but give it a minute, it looks different when it's dry, I promise. And with that, onto the details, the final stretch. First thing I started with are the eyes, so I masked the area around the face, because at this stage I don't wanna risk it at all. I mixed Moon Yellow with that white for the eyeballs and added more and more white for a yellow tinted off-white. Then I drew the iris in with a pencil and after that used a fine brush with a mix of Parasite and Leather Brown to fill it out. And you can see how it's not really working well. The brushwork was too uneven, so I touched it off with the airbrush and I used the smallest nozzle size I got. I just want to be safe, I don't want to redo the eyes. Being cautious paid off, it looks so much better. For the pupils and line art, I just use blade. Simple and straightforward. You can also clearly see how shaky my line art is. I am really unexperienced with the paintbrush. Thankfully, it isn't as noticeable at a distance. And for more soul and life in the eyes, a circle of ironically dead white as the highlight. This part was another team effort between the paintbrush and the airbrush. Now it's the turn for the rest of the body. The details are pretty basic, just some highlighting and shading to make it pop. I grab a firm brush and mix the base color with some white to create a simple highlight tone. To get that worn edge effect, I use very little paint and gently run the side of the brush along the edges. This is such an easy way to show more of the model. It reveals plane changes and also breaks up the solid color. And you can see it doesn't matter if it's the horn, shell, spike or the chest, it instantly makes it more interesting to look at. Now by the shading, we can push the form and plane changes even further, giving it another layer of depth. It's most noticeable on the chest, where the muscle definition really comes through beautifully. And as a final touch, to break up the huge same color surfaces, I sprinkle on some dark and light color droplets on the rocky parts to imitate different particles in the rock. Which also took some trial and error. Not a huge deal if the color is still wet, just wipe it away and try again. A little tip, grab a spray can cap, just run your brush across the edge, it keeps the splatter under control and gives a nice even spray, way cleaner than flicking your brush with your fingertip, which just sends too much paint everywhere. The hardest part now is just stopping, letting it be done, leaning back and actually enjoy what I made. Well, I am now the proud owner of the only one-of-one Kragg statue in existence. First of all, I'm over the moon. Seeing this big fella just standing there makes me so happy. Hope you don't mind that I replay the final version footage on repeat, I need some visuals while I'm rambling. I may be biased, but I think it turned out amazing, still can't believe it's already done. And I don't care that he is kinda cross-eyed, it adds charm, that's what I'm telling myself. Overall, it's a funny and whimsical thing to have and have made. Now I want to pull back the curtains and share some thoughts on the project. There are a lot of things that I could have done better. Let's go through it, step by step. First, let's talk about the model. The way I split the model was not smart and made more work, and created many seams that should not exist, or I could hide better. I should have split the model something like this, and made it more like pluggable like Lego, a more modular approach if you will. That's something I'll fix and release properly once I clean up the model. The digital work is easy to fix, so no worries there. Printing was both easy and hard. I wasn't prepared for how much could go wrong during the process. It is just plugging in a USB stick and pressing start, but the printer does fail and user error most of the time is the cause. Here is a clip how much trash I made and could have avoided. But I am keeping the waste and plan to find a way to recycle it into a new spool of filament. Maybe someday I'll have something like CNC Kitchen's ArtMe 3D recycler setup. Overall, I think that if I had the better split model, I could have saved both time and material. This project had many firsts. Writing a script, for example, is hard, I never done it, but it was a nice creative challenge. I think this will grow on me with time and exercise. Recording voiceover was super weird at first. Hearing my own voice made me shiver, but over time I got more comfortable with it, and I think you can really hear the difference by the end. Video editing was something I've done in the past, but with Premiere Pro, and I don't want to pay for it again, so I switched to DaVinci Resolve. I didn't expect how intuitive working with DaVinci Resolve is. There are lots of tutorials and guides if you encounter any problems. I can really recommend working with it. If you want to give video editing a try, please try out DaVinci Resolve. Repairing second-hand tools is one of the biggest serotonin boosts I had while working. Instant morale booster and cheaper than buying new stuff. And lastly, all the footage was recorded with my Samsung Galaxy A51 and surprisingly the time-lapse was just a button, nothing more. I didn't know why, but I thought time-lapsing was something tedious, but the tedious part was waiting. And I think for phone footage the video looks great, especially for first-time production, but maybe that's just copium. Those are my final thoughts on the project. I already have a new project I'm working on, but if you have any ideas or suggestions or other feedback, please let me know. Maybe consider liking and subscribing if you had fun or I made your lunch or dinner less boring. Thank you for your time, I mean it. Hope you will still be doing great the next time.